I can't do it. Okay. We'll do it live. Okay. Look. No. We'll do it live. Fuck it. Do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live. Right. Fucking thing sucks.
In 5, 4, 3.
All right. Hello, everybody. Let me know if you guys can hear me okay, like 5x5, if I don't sound janky. Ever since that happened on Patreon, I've kind of been paranoid about it. Hey, Black RG, Meatball, hello, Caden Christian, Psycho Manta 65, Hail Santa, and Alqueem. I hate that it's you guys' ats now, because I don't recognize certain people, but good evening, good afternoon, hello, hey, Nunya Biz. So today, we are going to begin a very long sort of backward walk with the Satanic Temple, and it's going to be long. I don't know how many episodes this is going to take me. It's something that I've been wanting to do, especially because, I am fortunate that there are a lot of new people that are here. I'm very grateful for that. Hello, Pinky and the Brain, 5x5. Thanks, guys. The turning point stuff, that's fine. I'm not really worried about that. But this is my focus. It's always been my focus. And thanks to my dear friend Echo Cat, the Bloodhound, he sent me on a spiraling rabbit hole with this article that we are going to start with and work our way backwards from there. This information, what I'm going to be showing you, I think I'll be able to get to it today, at least one of these publications. This is not safe for work. This is not for sensitive eyes. Some of this information is extremely disgusting, but I think that it's important because we gotta put it out here, right? These people want you, they think that you're stupid, and they want you to think that none of this is going on. So I'm just giving you a warning now, and that's the only warning that you're going to get. And hello, Michael Sear and Julia and Old Dirty Shinobi. So I'm going to go ahead and run the intro, and then we will get into it.
Authorities tell us that the most serious, or perhaps the most dangerous kind of devil worship comes in the form of underground cults. Most of them are very secretive, usually organizing clandestine rituals in the dark of night. Well, those ceremonies sometimes involve the sharing of animal blood to gain power, they say, but cult members believe their strength really comes from secrecy.
For the endlessness of timelessness.
Okay, hello, Mr. Bart and Joe the Goat and Coatney. Thank you, and thank you, Michael Sear. Yeah, it's definitely born in the wrong era. So, what we are going to get into today, we are going to start with this very specific article because you may be wondering, the title of this stream is a little bit tantalizing, right? What exactly is she talking about? Well, you're about to find out because. And I said this on the Patreon, but I need to say it here just so that everyone is aware, so that way I don't get stupid questions in my chat. Anytime I reference Doug, Dougie, Lucian, Doug, I'm not talking about Doug Kramer, okay? If I'm talking about Doug Kramer, I'm going to say the name Doug Kramer. And hello, Misinformation, Nemesis and Hades, hello, I love you, and Miss Mandy and Retardo Genio, I like that name. I'm not talking about Doug Kramer. I am talking about Lucy and good old one-eyed Doug, okay? But we're going to get into this because I would like people to remember Doug is not just some fucking edgelord out here, and I'm sorry, but this article has had me fuming since I read it, which has been over a week now. He is the public face of the biggest, I would say, well-known, government-recognized satanic church in this country. Now, if you would like, and I will add the link when I am done, or one of the mods can get it, it doesn't matter to me, I don't mind doing it. Hello, Dave. I did a stream called How to Get Away with Ritual Murder, showing countless examples through time in modern history about satanic crime. Doug wants you to think that that's not real. I find this very concerning that these people, because we're going to look at some court stuff too. I want you to keep that in mind though. He is the public face of this institution that has religious tax exempt status. Whether he wants to sit there and play the stupid word games because they don't work with me about whether they're theistic or not. Because as we walk through this journey, you guys are going to see some of the greatest hits of the many public fights that me and Dougie have had, where I've got him to say or admit to some pretty crazy stuff. And hello, Blueberry Street. So let's go ahead and let's get into what might well be the most ridiculous article that I've ever read in my entire life. Let me make sure that I've got this set up proper. That way you guys can see it. All right, cool. Hopefully you guys can read that okay. So, the Satanic Cult Crime Conspiracy is still nowhere to be found. And Why the Order of Nine Angles and 764 Are Not It by Lucian Greaves, written 2 weeks ago, December 13th, 2025. This past summer, a woman named Courtney Tamagni, I hope I'm saying that right, the daughter of a New Jersey police chief, filed a lawsuit that named as defendants the New Jersey Division of Child Protection and Permanency, DCPP, New Jersey Department of Children and Families, the Commissioner of the New Jersey Department of Children and Families, New Jersey's lead DCPP investigator, the Bergen County Prosecutor's Office, the state of New Jersey, her father, her father's friend, as well as 20 John Does and Jane Does whose names are yet to be quote-unquote remembered. Gotta wet my whistle. Hold on, guys. If you're not familiar with this case, this is going to court and the mother divorced the father over this. I'm just saying. Tamagni not only alleges that her father was part of a satanic cult that abused her throughout her childhood, but she is suing the various New Jersey public agencies named above for, to quote the tortured language of the complaint, failure to protect, depriving her of her constitutional due process rights, her right to be free from government conspiracy with private actors to deprive her of her rights. Having taken her claims of satanic ritual abuse to these various agencies, Tamagni is suing all of them for their failure to find merit in her claims, which she now believes is evidence of a government conspiracy to deny her quote-unquote truth. There are good reasons to be skeptical of Tamagni's claims, to put it mildly. Not only do her allegations perfectly echo satanic panic narratives that have been proven false time and again. Really? And not only does Tamagni make claims that are deeply improbable on their face, such as her claim that she and other children were regularly subjected to a game in which they would try to flee their aggressors, who would hunt them and club them unconscious with baseball bats, despite no mention of ongoing complications or medical records related to a childhood history of traumatic brain injuries. Well, I'm going to stop you right there, Doug, because anybody that's actually looked into this shit, yeah, of course they're not going to have medical records for it. Hold on. Let me see 1 second. I'm looking at the chat, please. Hold on. Whoop. No, nope. Misinformation's cool. I'm going to unhide somebody. I'm going to leave it here for now, for the moment. I don't know who they are. I don't know who misinformation is. I didn't see anything negative them being said. Sorry. So I just want to keep it. As long as people are not typing names or anything. Okay? And hi everybody. I'm not trying to ignore the chat. But yeah, this is what I'm talking about. This right here, this history of traumatic brain injuries, it's like that would implicate the parents if the hospital was acting appropriately. But Doug thinks that you're stupid. Remember that. But Tamagni has also clearly been absorbed into the mental health conspiracist fringe that worked to validate and propagate the satanic panic claims that defined the witch hunt of the 1980s and 90s. Witch hunt. That's a really, really big word here. Her lawsuit alleges that she suffers from quote unquote repression and disassociation, and that only through intensive psychotherapy and treatment for severe emotional problems was she able to connect the sexual assault, battery, and abuse to her injuries. You see how he's putting these things in scare quotes? Repression, dissociation. Does this mean that these things are not real? In other words, she is using the discredited method of recovered memory therapy to discover what she believes to be previously repressed traumas of satanic abuse. While some who have undergone this irresponsible quack therapy feel a welcome new sense of purpose in embracing their fresh identity as a survivor of a non existent conspiracy, there is also a history of mental health care consumers who sued their therapists for engaging in coercive practices that indoctrinated their clients into false, destructive, paranoid beliefs. Tamagni's filing includes the assessment of one Dr. Stephen N. Gold, who concludes that, in his professional opinion, and with a reasonable degree of psychological certainty, the abuse described by Tamagni indeed did occur. It is troubling that Dr. Gold is an active clinical psychologist and director of a trauma resolution and integration program at the Psychological Services Center in Nova Southeastern University, given his affiliation as a fellow in the International Society for the Study of Trauma and Disassociation, or ISSTD, a conspiracist organization which hosts annual conferences that have included lectures regarding satanic ritual abuse, Illuminati mind control, and other deranged notions from the pseudoscientific conspiracy theorist fringe. Fuck you, Doug. This is insulting. I would recommend everybody go listen to my last podcast episode on what is the process, where I actually read from one of the doctors that they tried to have her license illegally revoked with no basis in it. I go through quite a bit of her literature. Without any basis in reality, Tamagni's claims are validated by Dr. Gold, who will now add his having acted as an expert witness in a satanic ritual abuse case to validate his expertise in an invented phenomenon. Regardless of the outcome of the case, it is a dysfunctional circle of validation, and such has it always been in the field of satanic cult crime experts. This one is where it gets really rich. Earlier this month, Australian authorities arrested 4 men who they claim were part of an international satanic child sex ring. While not much has been released in the way of details, to the point that we cannot even say what the Australian law enforcement officials mean by satanic, there is already reason for skepticism, and the skepticism is not mitigated by the fact that the arrest was made by a strike force assembled specifically to recognize and prosecute satanic cult crimes. Just the opposite. The fact that experts in a heretofore imaginary phenomenon suddenly claim to have found what they already believed to exist is highly suspect from the start. I would like people to, again, consider that this is the person who is the face of an organization that has tax-exempt religious status in the United States of America. Experts in an imaginary phenomenon. Strikeforce Constantine was formed only 8 months ago and could only be built on an expertise constructed from conspiracy theories, as no credible evidence of the satanic cult conspiracy has ever been found. Take Doug, because he thinks he's so fucking smart, at his word. The leader of the Satanic Temple, aka the Satanic faction of the process, is telling you that there is no such thing as satanic, I would say, occult crime. Do you see what I mean about he thinks you're stupid? Yeah. What about sexual assault in the temple, Doug? We're going to get into that. Would that count? Having written previously about the Tamagni case, as well as the Australian arrest, I have had well-meaning, probably not conspiracy-minded people ask, what of 764 or the Order of Nine Angles? Surely these groups both exist, and their depravity and criminality is well documented. Indeed, and this may well turn out to be what the Australian police are referring to, but neither 764 nor the Order of Nine Angles are what the ISSTD or other satanic cult crime experts have been talking about for the past 40-some years, and it is important we understand that. Nothing these charlatan experts have learned and credulously accepted as fact is likely to offer any insight at all into the characteristics and underlying motivations of a modern, satanically branded online criminal network. His choice of words here are very important, okay? Online criminal network, this is what he is framing this as. The so-called experts will pretend, of course, that there is unbroken continuity between their claims of satanic cult crimes from decades ago and the online activities of the Order of Nine Angles and 764, but nothing could be further from the truth. And this is not a mere matter of historical hair-splitting. It is the difference between facts and conspiracy theories. Do you see how he keeps using that words, conspiracy theories? And allowing conspiracy theories to claim validation from misappropriation of facts can be very harmful. Not only does it possibly obfuscate the investigation of very real crimes, imperiling their effective prosecution of the guilty, but it often leads to misguided persecution of the innocent. When questioned with any degree of critical scrutiny, the ritual abuse expert will say that they are merely referring to abuse performed in a ritual-like setting or conducted in a ritualistic fashion. In more credulous settings, like an ISSTD conference, the expert's understanding of ritual abuse crimes is typically much more specifically defined. In fact, the interest in alleged satanic ritual abuse within the ISSTD is not just in the fact that abuse is traumatic or that ritual abuse is thought to be that much more traumatic. Rather, the satanic cult crime conspiracy is believed to engage in a type of satanic ritual abuse that is uniquely traumatic, and uniquely traumatic by design. They call it trauma-based mind control, the intentional infliction of horrors so terrifying and disturbing that those who suffer them dissociate to the point of developing multiple personalities. These individual personalities are cultivated and programmed to perform discrete functions when called into activation by use of programmed triggers. If one listens to the diluted testimony of those indoctrinated through recovered memory techniques to imagine the worst horrors and interpret them as memories, they commonly claim to believe that they were raised in intergenerational satanic cults. According to this nonsensical narrative, the abusive satanic crimes suffered by the child victims were perpetrated by their own parents, who had suffered the same as the children themselves, and so on. But while the alleged victim will claim to have been rendered intentionally amnesic for all satanic activity up into adulthood, it is never clear when or how they or their parents would be brought into conscious awareness of their activities so as to carry on this hidden, undocumented, but allegedly ubiquitous dark tradition. And to be sure, the notion of intergenerational satanic trauma-based mind control is far from an obscure fringe theory within a wider world of respectable cult studies related to a more realistic view of satanic ritual abuse. This is what the consensus conspiracy theory of satanic ritual abuse is, and it is never suspended by a more rational or real world view of satanic ritual abuse, because there is none, and there never was any evidence of the phenomenon to begin with. And here is one of my biggest bones to pick. Because we are going to listen to an interview that Doug did where he admits himself that the Satanic Temple is basically the satanic faction of the process. But for all of the temple members that are listening, or Satanists in general, I don't really care. Occultist, I think that the term Satanist is overused, and I think that that is a result of what some might refer to Mockingbird media, because I think that Satanic Panic was also a Mockingbird media operation. Two things can be true at the same time, right? It's one hand washing the other. If satanic ritual abuse is not real, or ritual abuse, then I'm going to go ahead and step out on a limb, making your argument for you, that religious trauma is not real. Doug. And so the blaspheming activities that the Satanic Temple engages in, with the Eucharist and the butt wafers and the pee and the font where you pour it on each other while you guys are naked, I'm going to say that the people who experienced religious trauma, that's not real either. Do you see how fucking stupid that sounds? Okay. I just wanted to make that point. Because if we're going to play this, it can go both ways. And fuck you, Doug. There still has not been a credible case demonstrating ongoing abusive ritual activity as part of a doctrine of organized religious satanic activity. When the satanic cult crime experts speak of the symbols, scripts, and actions of satanic cults practicing satanic ritual abuse, they are constructing a conspiracist fantasy derived from popular culture, prevailing prejudice, victim testimony, often obtained through recovered memories, and other satanic cult crime experts. The online activities of the Order of Nine Angles and 764 are a recent phenomenon. The Order of Nine Angles name has existed since at least the 70s, but it has always been a non-organization. This is also a fucking lie. A decentralized label indicating less an adherence to any coherent doctrine than a dedication to shock and mentally stunted shitheadedness. When the untalented, low-watt minds of those claiming the Order of Nine Angles identity have produced text, it is far from a recipe dictating methods of producing obedient human robots by way of trauma-based mind control, but laughably pathetic mystical intergalactic Nazi fantasies regarding conquest of the Milky Way by a race of supermen. Now, do you know what that sentence sounds like and why I highlighted that? Because that's exactly what William Sims Bainbridge, one of your mentors, talks about. He actually waxes poetic about it. Pretty sure he's written a couple of books about it, and I've read some of them on my channel. It would be impossible to take seriously if tabloids like the Daily Mirror and anti-Satanist crusaders were not so desperate for some type of evidence for anti-human organized criminal satanic activity. Thus, Order of Nine Angles are held to be exemplars of satanic thought, giving the brand an elevated air of authenticity and horror, attracting more frightened and cowardly anonymous losers, further generating more enthusiasm from anti-Satanist crusaders in a symbiotic spiral. 764 is a recent spin-off of the Order of Nine Angles. Recent? It's a hot claim. Despite the history of the Order of Nine Angles name, the regular connection of its name and that of 764 to terrorism plotting online is recent. Interestingly, this online uprising of satanic Nazism immediately followed the beginning of Russia's ongoing propaganda campaign to paint Ukraine as a satanic Nazi nation. Do you think that Doug assumes that people don't read the news, including not mainstream news, because this is Doug ignoring the Atomwaffen, which we know the Order of Nine Angles has infiltrated the Atomwaffen and vice versa, right? Do you see why I said that he's painting it as a fucking Russiagate hoax against the church? More suspiciously, Satanist online terroristic plots, when discovered online, have clear Russian connections and are sometimes laden with implausible implications of Ukrainian collusion. Russia heavily propagandizes these instances to justify their holy war upon Ukraine, as well as their recent crusade to imprison any and all Satanists. I think it is reasonable to suspect that Russia is a driving force creating the recent Order of Nine Angles and 764 activity. This is literally from the Satanic Temple. I consider this, and I don't care if people think it's a stretch, sue me. The Satanic Temple is endorsing the Order of Nine Angles and 764 by saying that this is some Russiagate hoax. It's insulting your intelligence. But the more that the question of the Order of Nine Angles and 764 is approached through a framework of discredited conspiracy theories, the less likely we are to arrive at any useful truths. But whether Russian influenced or just motivated by the online rage of the real world failure's quest for respect through fear, theories of satanic ritual abuse and experts who espouse them are certain to do nothing to help provide insights into the actual motivations, activities, and beliefs of an actual Satanism branded modern entity of any type. Already one gets the impression that Australian police are attempting to fit the evidence into a prescribed narrative. And when more background is made available, we should not be surprised if we find the ISSTD and other conspiracy theorists responsible for the underlying assumptions of Strikeforce Constantine. Assuming there is any actual suggestion of Satanism in the alleged crimes at all, we need to be clear that satanic branding is not the same as a coherent religious philosophy and could, in fact, merely be convenient for propaganda purposes. Online chat boards do not make for an organization, and the theories of satanic ritual abuse and trauma-based mind control are still as much complete bullshit as they ever were. Whatever the truth is in regards to the allegations in Australia, the experts in the field of satanic cult crimes are the least qualified to discover them, and their inclusion in any type of investigation only threatens to obscure the truth through the forced inclusion of more than 40 years of myth, lies, and delusions. That is your Satanic Temple. What do you think about that? He literally said that the investigators in Australia are not qualified because this has never existed. Because here's the thing, is that people have killed for change, for pocket change. People want to talk about like the Sabbatean Frankists and all that stuff, right? People love going there. Why wouldn't they kill in the name of Satan? Or Lucifer? People have killed in the name of many things and caused great harm over many other things. So let's get real. Let's be intellectually honest with one another. I'm not here to insult your intelligence. Don't insult mine. Okay? If priests in the Catholic Church have become a meme for diddling little boys, isn't the Satanic Church made up of people? People that are flawed? People that are prone to doing the things that people do, which is just terrible shit? shit that deserves you go out back in the wood chipper. Okay? It's the intellectual dishonesty of people like Lucy and Greaves. Dougie. And hey, incredibly lame media. So nice that you're here. So nice to see you. Doug wants you to believe that none of this is real. I hope that the people who have donated to the Satanic Temple, personally, I hope that you reconsider moving forward. It's just food for thought to keep in mind. Because while we are not going to read through this, and this is where the second to last trigger warning that I give goes in, we are going to scan through it. And this is just one spin-off or one faction, and then we're going to listen to what Doug has to say. I've censored these photos the best that I can. This information can be found online, like in the way back, okay? And if you do go and look for it, determine for yourself if you think that these photos are real, okay? But we're going to look at, because this is a very recent publication, because again, he said that it's Russian propaganda in regards to Ukraine and this holy war, completely ignoring that. For those of us that have been paying attention, we know about the fucking Nazis in the Atomwaffen, okay? We know about the Satanists in the Atomwaffen. But again, Doug thinks that you're stupid. So let's go ahead and let us begin. And I apologize ahead of time. So, Corrective Discipline, Volume 1, Issue 2, The Noctulian Blood Covenant. Notice the publisher name, Gorwaffen, and the year that this was published, 2024. Now, again, not going to read all of this. It's a long read. However, in talking about the relevance of the Noctulian Blood Covenant, they talk about their separation from the mundane to exit the degenerative world to propel themselves into otherness. They, and their superiority, share nothing in common with the mindless dross of Magian society. They are literally at war with us. By our very sinister nature, we are the predators, and they are our prey. Now, these people do engage in blood rituals, a lot of them. Sinister supremacy is our way. We are bound by no Magian laws, by no morals, by no kindness. This is evolution. And yeah, again, this was published last year. Okay? This was published last year. Now, for those of you who are familiar with a Josh Sutter, this source, and again, you can go and find it, in regards to Josh Sutter 764, this Temple of Blood stuff, and this Nexion definition, this is going to break it all down for you. But these people do consider themselves to be vampires, okay? Blood is very important to their rituals. They term this as feeding. Sometimes they refer to it as the blood pool or the Nexion vampiric practice, blood essence. And I am going to show you guys eventually one of their oldest publications documenting this. Obviously, these people have a deep veneration for Hitler. This ain't Nick Fuentes' show, so don't come in here simping for that clown or Hitler. The Rape Sanctuary. And again, I'm not going to sit here and read all of this crap. But this is fan fiction written about someone being raped and the purpose that this serves in terrorizing someone emotionally, psychologically, and physically, and how this gives people power. And yeah, what do you want me to say? This is theirs. This is theirs. Blood makes the grass grow. Yeah, stack the bodies to God. The gore barracks. We're going to just scroll all the way to the end. And again, I would encourage people to go and look this up because they do speak with a representative from the Turkish Order of Nine Angles, and it is very fascinating, but I'm only going to read the highlighted parts. This individual, the spokesperson for the Turkish faction, says Satanism can never be ethical or moral in any way, nor can it be an intellectualized philosophy. It is an individualized challenge and an individualized striving for a life-giving, ecstatic affirmation of existence. So you saw Doug's argument of how, oh, these things aren't organized. They're not a cohesive religion. There you go. If you want to put it that way. Okay. Now, why did I highlight Arthurian tradition? Well, because of, King Arthur, Camelot, all of that stuff. Now, they ask about the Temple of Blood. And he says, the Temple of Blood's current situation has unfortunately become a black mark over the years because of Josh Sutter. Besides Drakon Covenant, Temple of Blood is one of the groups that contributed the most sinister literature on vampirism. This cannot be denied. Noctulians is one of the three main traditions in the founding of the Order of Nine Angles after all. Today's Temple of Blood is too corrupt and influences too many unconscious people, so he definitely needs a change of image. A main tradition. And again, if you go and you look up Noctulian and the Temple of Blood with a V for of, you will see it is rape and it is blood. These individuals that they are talking about, specifically Sutter, Chloe, and Martin S. Press, this is the Fed angle, okay? We're not going to get into that today because that's not really my focus. But it is interesting because we see a consistent theme here. Child abuse is not a satanic act. No child up to the age of 16 is allowed to participate in a ritual. Well, we're going to see some things that are going to discredit that as we go on our journey, specifically with individuals that are from the time of Mr. Anton Long. That's one of his monikers. On the contrary, what I call child abuse is a dishonorable act that develops under the influence of a Magian, Nazarene, Jewish influence. We have seen this in the recent Epstein Island case. Child abuse is a Jewish Magian act. Again, they're insulting your intelligence. Please understand that, okay? Now, right here. They can be sure that the Order of Nine Angles is satanic and sinister enough. They are not noble enough to join the Order of Nine Angles, talking about teenagers that get excited, which is founded on thousands of years of Albion tradition and the roots of the Celtic spirit. They can continue to deceive themselves. They will get lost in the outer forms of the Labyrinthos Mythologicus and never reach the Lapis Philosophicus. They will never become true. Baljaka. And talking right here about Gorwaffen and how they need to protect themselves from pretenders. And thank you so much for the super chat, whoever gave that. Thank you very much. Thank you, thank you. Now, right here, talking about the internet. Because remember, Doug thinks that this is just an internet conspiracy out of Russia, right? This representative says that the internet is not necessary or unnecessary, but in terms of the Order of Nine Angle culture, it can only serve as a tool for certain purposes and nothing more. Correct, because this isn't just online and loosely based. Doug thinks that nobody's going to sit here and look into this. And again, here's another theme that we see, something that John Mappin has stated recently in regards to the investigation of what happened to Charlie Kirk. I think a third world war is necessary for the establishment of the Imperium. The Galactic Imperium is just an idea. Even if there is a war in today's world, it is a very distant and difficult possibility. Again, this William Sims Bainbridge type language, okay? And right here, talking about Sutter. They call him a traitor, his wife, and then Chloe, Temple of Them. Not going to sit here and go through all of that, but right here, again, notice the language. The sinister Arthurian tradition or Celtic head cult. You can sit here and say that this is satanic panic all you want. And it's very interesting because when I was reading this individual, this female, who is kind of giving her reticence about joining, right? She references a book that I've read that mentions the process. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating that this is kind of what got her to join, right? The typical watered-down Satanist could never fathom the brutality, the passion, and devotion of the collective. The Order of Nine Angles extremism began a revolution of terror with militant standards. The Nexions created themselves with no order, no law, other than to push the sinister agenda to ultimate violence. And that is what it is. It is ultimate violence. Now, remember how he said trauma-based mind control, ritual abuse, all of that? Trauma being essential for sinister growth and to welcome trauma. This is part of how you join this group. So, if trauma is essential to be sinister, but that can't be weaponized in a different way, do you see how hard it is to stay on track with Doug? We're just going to continue to scroll through. That way you can see the whole thing. There is one of their other controversial publications, Hostia. And here talking about Islam. And again, the, similar points here that they make, not that I make, not me. Okay. But let's just go ahead and let's scroll through the rest of this. There we go. The cube equals Saturn. Saturn equals chaos. Chaos equals Satan. Gotta wonder if Operation Chaos was named after that. And again, I have to censor this because I don't know what's real and I don't know, if these people consented to any of this. This is talking about the casual in regards to feeding, in regards to these blood rituals, or also what they call culling. That is a dead dog that they strangled, okay? That's a dog. Do you think that this is healthy? That the Satanic Temple is, in my opinion, endorsing this and saying that this is some type of weird Russian conspiracy theory? And this goes into great detail about the Temple of Blood's Black Lodge Discipline Center, acknowledging that there is no such thing legally as consensual violence. When evil is enacted, genuine, no-holds-barred movements against all acceptable limits, not only that which is considered safe societally speaking, and oftentimes that which is legally prosecutable, the world is turned upside down. And these people have a great veneration for Jim Jones, which is interesting, especially considering the affinity that Genesis Peorage has for Jim Jones. And who else gave me a super chat? Holy shit, 50, damn, thank you. Thank you. Holy crap. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm not trying to ignore the chat. Jesus, thank you, man. Damn, that's a lot of money. Thank you. Right here, though, sorry, that threw me off. Talking about discipline, because that was the title of this magazine, right? They do waterboarding. And in this, they talk about implementing hallucinogens to intensify this ritual. Not only is it punishment, but it's a ritual. And it talks here, it says, this torture method activates a causal intrusion because the body is suspended in a panic, and the artificially induced drowning sensation suspends the ego, allowing for a causal intrusion. So long as the operative does not quit the exercise, he will be heightening his ability to resist extreme interrogation techniques and strengthening his will. 333. We're almost to the end of it. Second to last page. Now, for those of you who have seen True Detective Season 1, doesn't that look familiar? Because it does to me. Or, for those that are familiar with the Delphi case, does that look familiar? Correct. Waterboarding isn't a CIA technique or anything. That's right. Do you see what I mean that these people think that you're stupid? And yes, Sutter was heavily involved in Juche. Correct. Now, in regards to the Sutter angle, I will add at some point in the description of the video that I recommend about Sutter, because when you really peel back the layers there, it deserves its due diligence. And this video does do a fantastic job, because two things can be true at the same time. And this is why I'm glad that I have historical knowledge about these types of crimes. And I think that this speaks to the late, great Dave McGowan, may he rest in peace, to his thesis of the marriage of satanic cults and the intelligence community. Thank you so much, Silent G. Thank you. Someone like Sutter can be an informant, right? People involved with Delphi can be informants, right? And there can still be individuals that actually believe in this stuff and still do these things for those purposes. But all of that in mind, they are informants. So the idea that the FBI is going to do anything is childish. And again, I understand that that's very frustrating for some people. People think that, the FBI is going to come in and save the day. They're not. The FBI is not going to burn their own agents or their own operation. Look at how long it took for the stuff about Sutter to come out. And a lot of people still don't know about that. There are still people out here who shitcoat that angle too. And I think that that's why people talk about it on mainstream news. So we have the biggest satanic organization in the United States that has religious tax exempt status out here, in my opinion, from what we read, endorsing the Order of Nine Angles and 764, chalking it up to a Russian conspiracy theory online, saying that the Australian case is fake, saying that the case out of New Jersey is fake. I've just shown you their own publication, where again, you can go and look in the way back, and you tell me if you think that the dismembered body is real or not, or the individual bent over and bleeding, if that is real or not. And read what they write. Because again, we're not going to touch on everything today. But this is what your government is involved in. That's what I'm trying to get people to understand. It doesn't mean all of the government. It's never all or none. But individuals like John Douglas, who is a bitch, and his whole mind hunter thing, I say that this is the fruit of his rotten theory of how do we understand crazy? How do we get ahead of crazy if we don't understand it? Because you have to do it. And I think that this is what we're seeing now. This is the rotten fruit of that. Now, what I'm going to go ahead and do is we're going to pull up this video, and you guys will have to tell me, because this is a video that I made, if you guys can hear it okay. Let me get it ready. And I made captions. If you're on my Patreon, then you've already had access to this. This is not behind a paywall or anything. So, you know, if you guys try to copyright strike me or whatever, I mean, whatever, I guess I'll just edit this and re-upload it. But I'm going to be kind of pausing throughout and providing commentary. Let me make sure the volume is up. Okay, I'm going to start it, and then you guys tell me if it's too loud or if it sounds terrible, whatever the case is. Let me see. It's not going to let me share the system audio. Why not? Fuck. Hold on. Why isn't it going to let me do that? No. Am I going to have to pull up Patreon and play it? I think so. Oh, no. I am. Hold on. Hold, please. Talk amongst yourselves. I got to pull up the Patreon. Damn it. Damn it. Damn it. Thank you so much. Thank you. And sorry, I'm having a brain fart. The two people that sent me Venmo and PayPal gift, thank you so much. Thank you. You made me cry. That's all I have to say. So, fuck, hold on. I gotta log in. I'm sorry, guys. I thought that this video was gonna work. I hate Google Chrome. Can I just say that? I hate Google Chrome. Okay, let's see if this is gonna work. Fuck. Oh, no. I'm gonna be so mad. No. Hold, please. Hold, please. Talk amongst yourselves for 5 minutes. Oh, no. Let me see. I don't like Google Chrome. Well, I mean, you haven't missed any. Well, I don't know. I don't like what I just showed, so I would say that you haven't missed anything. But obviously, it is important context, right? So, come on, you little nasty. Thank you. Okay, now let me switch over to. There we go. Okay, there we go. All right, I think I'm in. Bada boom, bada bing. Sorry, guys. I thought that this was going to let me literally just play a video, but clearly it's not. So, hold up here. And, whoop, don't want to do that. Go to the post. Yeah, y'all keep talking to yourselves for 5 seconds. I'm almost there. I'm getting there. Okay. Oh, this is embarrassing. All right, so volume is up. Okay, let's try it this way now. For Christ. All right, so here we go. Let's give this a shot. Can you tell that I'm sweating my ass off? It's hot in here. Okay. All right. Can you guys see this okay? Now tell me if you can hear it.
This is Sacred Tension, the podcast about the discipline of asking questions. My name is Stephen Bradford Long. We are here on the Rock Candy Podcast Network. For more shows like this one, go to rockcandyrecordings.com. All right. Well, I am here once again with Lucian Greaves.
Can you guys hear this okay? Yeah? It's good? Because it's like full max on my side. Okay. As long as you guys can hear it.
The co-founder and spokesperson of the Satanic Temple. Lucian, welcome back.
Great to be on.
So before we get into it, we just had our first Satan Con in Arizona. I was not there. I will try to be there at the next one. But how was it? How did it go?
By all accounts, it went very well. And I know there's more coverage coming still. There were people putting together fuller mini documentary style type reports from it. I mean, outside of the TST camp, but I have
interesting.
High hopes that they'll make a quality product.
One can hope.
But next year, I assume we'll have less concern regarding COVID, and it'll be our 10-year anniversary. So that should be lit.
Are you trying to fit in with the kids?
Yeah, as the kids would say.
Do the kids even say lit anymore? I feel like that was very 3 years ago. or 4 years ago. I don't
All
even
right.
know.
Well, I'm catching up. When did the Catholic Church pardon Galileo? I'm doing pretty good.
Absolutely, fair enough. Yeah. So, as usual, whenever you come on, I put out some feelers on Twitter and my Discord to see what people might want us to talk about. And we did get a question that I thought was really, really interesting, which is, oh, hold on. Where the fuck did it go?
Not that you only got one question.
No, I got
you got one that you thought was interesting.
Precisely. So, no, I get way too many questions whenever you come on, and it's always stupid shit. So, hold on. let me find one. There have been some really it's always, how has Satan Mingle made an impact in his life?
How has Satan mingled?
Yes, made an impact on your life. Let's see here. Why did the guy with the dinosaur claw rip that lady's tit off?
Oh, I know what that's about.
Let's see. Ask him if he's wearing pants. Are you wearing pants, Lucian? You don't
Pants, I'm
don't
afraid,
answer.
are wearing me.
Okay, good. What's your favorite type of cookie?
No, let's get back to the dinosaur ripping the tit.
Okay, let's talk about the dinosaur.
It's a reference to last night's movie night, Massacre in Dinosaur Valley. And
okay,
clearly
so for
the
people,
dinosaur only ripped open half her tit so that another bare-breasted woman could suck the wound.
I mean, of course, why not?
It's a good movie.
It sounds like it.
There wasn't actually any dinosaurs to be seen either. And it kept kind of going back and forth. It couldn't decide whether it wanted to be this white-knuckled, tense, escape from Amazonian cannibal movie, or if it just wanted to be softcore porn. So it kind of did both of them. So they'd be on the run from cannibals, and then they would just hit the ground and start making out with boobs.
Have you heard of or watched the movie A Nymphomaniac in Dinosaur Hell?
No, it sounds like a good movie.
It sounds right up your alley. For people who are completely lost, you have a regular movie night every Wednesday night, and it's a lot of fun. I have popped in there every now and then.
Yeah, triple feature every time. And I got to say, after a couple solid years of doing it, we're still not. I still feel like I haven't scratched the surface of the archive of bad movies.
Absolutely. It's endless. All right. So now that we've gotten through some of the stupid questions, not that they're stupid. I mean, I'm glad that people love you enough to just regale my Twitter feed with lots of questions. So
you're not giving those questions enough credit.
Fair. But there is one question that I thought that we could spend some time on, which is from Ilium Shadows. And they say, I was curious to find out if at all his interest and research into the Process Church influenced how he approached the development of TST. If there was anything he took inspiration from. After watching the Process doc on TST TV, I was curious. So perhaps before we answer that question, you could say some about what the Process Church of the Final Judgment was.
Well, my interest in the Process really came from my earlier interest in the Satanic Panic and trying to figure out why people believe these crazy things. And if you started exploring the notions that were put forward related to the Satanic Panic, that there were these cults operating in silence all throughout society and trying to undermine everything that we hold dear to our Christian morals in the United States and beyond, the Process was kind of isolated as this satanic cult that was responsible for it all by some of the conspiracy theorists. And you can see that narrative come up again in the Sons of Sam documentary that came out recently on Netflix.
Now, this is an incredibly important point that I want to stop at. Because let's not forget who produced or directed that documentary. One, Josh Seaman. Let us not forget in the video that me and Parker did, The Vanishing Legacy of Maury Terry, that Josh and Dougie admitted that they were friends. Let us all remember this. And Messner It's not his legal last name. His legal last name is Masico. Douglas Masico. Remember that these people know each other, is my point. Because you notice his tone and the inflection. Well, my interest in the process. Okay, Doug, whatever you say. Let's go ahead and let us continue.
You know, to be fair, I should mention I gave some shit publicly to the director of that documentary, who did reach out to me and say that I got the wrong message from the documentary, that the documentary wasn't.
I don't know how you got the wrong message, because that's also the message that I got.
Right. But I think it was very inept at doing anything that would have attempted to not give that message.
Yeah.
But I don't doubt that the director, I honestly feel like he was just kind of naive as to how the audience would receive it, and thought that it was good enough to put the idea out there and people would, you know, have a sense that that this was the story of a conspiracy theorist going too far down a rabbit hole or whatever.
And
now, again, Doug just told you what the purpose of that documentary was. It was designed as a bait and switch. By design. It was to smear the late Maury Terry. Just like if you listen to the supplemental podcast of Josh Siemens that goes along with that, it's only a couple of episodes. There's a lot of things that Josh lets out of the bag that he omitted from the documentary, and you got to wonder why. Do you see how they're all in on some type of joke that nobody else is supposed to get? Okay? These are their words. Why does it take such a concerted effort with money? Netflix money. Fuck you money, as I like to call it. To discredit one person. Because Maury Terry's only one person. Right? Why does it take all that? What's that saying? The lady doth protest just a little bit too much. Yeah, the lady's protesting way too much.
The idea that we're discussing is that the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which was this new religious movement in the 60s, had a hand in like the Son of Sam murders. I've also seen them linked to the Manson murders. I've seen them linked to all kinds of terrible things that happened during that period of time. And so all of it was not true. They were wrongly linked. And
well, they
as I
had
know,
the aesthetic, and that really helped create this pattern of illusion around them that they were responsible for these mythic crimes that we could never find any evidence for, but they could at least point to a cult. And the process very much was a cult. And the idea that they did all kinds of horrific things and that they were Satanists, and even calling them Satanists is kind of an abuse of the term, because they certainly wouldn't have considered themselves to be Satanists.
Now, I'm stopping here. Again, I'm going to be stopping a lot. So if this is annoying to you, I apologize, but this is serving a purpose. Let us not forget when Tom O'Neill, the author of Chaos, Tom, went on Rick Rubin's podcast and called them basically a satanic cult, where Tom O'Neill blatantly lied about what happened between Ed Sanders and the process legally. And Rick Rubin, because he's going to come into all of this, the one that Candace said was sent in to be her handler. Yeah, Candace Owens. That Rick Rubin pretended that he didn't know what the process was. Again, it's recognizing what these individuals are saying. You have to pay attention. because this is a very expensive propaganda campaign. A very expensive propaganda campaign. But if you pay attention, they do say it right there for you.
Though they did venerate Christ and Satan as opposing opposites, and they had this idea of the reconciliation of the opposites that transcended its component parts, kind of thing. And you might see shades of that already in descriptions of the Baphomet monument when we started putting that together. And as for the question of how the process church inspired the Satanic Temple, I would say earlier on it inspired the Satanic Temple in similar ways that groups like the Church of Satan inspired the Satanic Temple, which is that we could see what we felt they had done wrong. And
now, what they felt that they had done wrong. However, the reconciliation of opposites, this more intellectual study, religious study of Satanism, that is what the Baphomet statue is based off of, is process theology. So again, for those who want to sit here and say that I make a stretch in connecting the process to things, there it is out of his own fucking mouth that your government gave this group religious tax exempt status, when it is just one of the many factions of the process. I've laid out plenty of evidence for this, but let's go ahead and continue.
And did not want to repeat those things. And I mean, that's not even to throw shade, as the lit kids might say, at the process or the Church of Satan. But the process, like I said, was very much a cult. And when I say that, I mean, I know that pejorative term is thrown at any religious group that's ever started, including us, without thought, just because it sounds good and it sounds like the proper criticism to put towards a religious organization that you don't like. But the process inner circle very much did dictate the minutia of everybody's lives within it, and they even paired people up sexually and had these bizarre kinds of episodes where they would do these things that were there very much micromanaging each other's lives and living very much in a communal setting amongst one another. But like I said, their belief system was far more complicated than this idea that they were merely Satanists, and that they, not to say merely Satanists, but they had a more complex kind of theology with many, many deities. They had Christ, Satan, Lucifer, and Jehovah. And the core idea was this idea of transcending these conflicts and the reconciliation of opposites, but they kind of changed shape over time. They changed ideas over time. They never really kind of settled on one thing. The organizational structure of the process changed throughout time. And before they kind of fell apart, they were a bit of an embarrassment, sending cult members out onto the street to beg for donations and try to sell magazines and things like that. Definitely not something we want to emulate.
Now, this is a huge bone that I have to pick with Doug, because this is, again, a blatant lie. What I am going to do, because, he's saying right here, I'm going to stop sharing this for a moment. What I am going to do is we are going to look at, what did he just say? That they were an embarrassment. If you read process literature, if you read all of Timothy Wiley's books, if you study this group, yeah, they went out and they sold their magazines. That wasn't the only way. If you think that they were bringing in what would be equivalent today, millions of dollars, then you're fucking stupid. I'm sorry. I hate to say that. But Doug thinks that you're stupid, so that's not my problem. I'm going to show you guys, because I'm working on archiving all of these in an organized way. That way you can see it. But he's saying that it just all fell apart, right? That it was completely disorganized. Now, let's go ahead and let's start with one of their, because as many of you know, they go through various iterations, correct? They change names throughout time. Now, I'm just going to pick a random one, and we are going to look at it because last night, when I was doing a little bit of digging, and I'm not going to go into it today, I did find one of the legal filings in Arizona for the Jewish Crusade, I believe, is one of their little spin-offs in this time period. Somebody screwed up and included private correspondence between Michael Mountain and the people that incorporated this group and how they were urging him to step away from the process. They wouldn't really get into specifics, but they seemed very concerned about what they were doing under the name the Foundation Faith of God, and they did not want their names attached to it. But I'll be saving that for another day. You tell me if this publication, just in and of itself, just one, if this looks disorganized. Foundation newsletter, outreach, August of 1980. Prison in Atlanta, the federal penitentiary. In Canada, at their Faith Center base in Brampton. In New York. Really, this is disorganized. Oh, they're in Dallas as well in prison. Wow, that's amazing. Oh, look, we have the Crusade of Innocence in children's hospitals. Yeah, they dress up as clowns, if you didn't know. They've got a location in Denver. The Garden Coffee House. The Garden Coffee House is the exact same as Satan's Cavern, for those who are unaware. And see, this is a little booklet that you could order. Fishers of Men made me think of flirty fishing. I'm not going to lie, but I don't want to make that stretch without being able to read it myself. Become a patron member of a foundation ministry. Does this look disorganized to you? To anybody with a fully developed frontal lobe? Oh, look, we've got Chicago as well, right here. The Chicago-based Spirit of Renewal. Here in the media. On Jim Baker's PTL Club TV broadcast. That's right, the fucking process was with the Bakers. Don't you think it's weird that none of this footage has ever been seen? Because they were on TV a lot. I think it's interesting. Let's go ahead and look. Canadian headquarters, Atlanta Foundation. Northeastern Foundation, located where? Washington, D.C. Las Vegas Foundation, Denver Foundation, Dallas Foundation, Christian Mental Health Healing Ministry, Crusade of Innocence Faith Center, and Ministry of Miracles, Jewish Crusade for Jesus, the Ministry of the Angels of Christ, Kingdom Crusade, the Spiritual Life Crusade, New Covenant Crusade, Divine Grace Ministries, Healing Ministry of the Conquering King, the Faith Center, Living Christ Ministries, and the Jewish Christian Outreach. Does that look disorganized to you? Does that look like a group that is silly? That doesn't know what they're doing? That they were just out there basically begging people to buy their magazines? Because that's what Doug would like you to think. He just said it himself. I'm not putting words in his mouth. Let's look at a couple of pictures. I have used, it's called Colorized with a K. It is a free little thing online that you can use. I took some of the images from some of these later magazines and colorized them to the best of my ability. That way, we can see what they're doing within this time period, because these individuals always say, the Son of Sam Netflix documentary. Tom O'Neill moved the goalpost a little bit with Rick Rubin. Doug, the process themselves today, including William Sims Bainbridge, that they disbanded in 1974, right? So this technically doesn't exist, even though I'm seeing it with my own eyes, and if you're looking, then you are as well. So, Laying of the Hands with Raphael DePire. Actually, I think that is Jonathan DePire. They mislabeled Raphael right there. That is his younger brother, who ended up going on to marry Marianne de Grimston. There is their Georgia Center. And if you zoom in really hard, you can see right there is the foundation logo. Animal Action And do you see why it makes sense that they became Best Friends Animal Society? The Foundation Faith of God, Raphael DePire right there. And there is Raphael and Jana announcing their marriage. And you see there's the logo right there. See, this is all still the process. Marianne is still here. Marianne is running this. Please don't forget that. They're just keeping her out of the magazine. Okay? That's all they're doing. Does this look disorganized to you? I will ask again. This looks to me like a well-funded, well-organized institution, right? That absolutely, because this is all in the 80s, did not disband in 1974. So if someone tells you that the process disbanded in 1974, please know that they are lying to you. And please, again, consider where it comes from. Because Doug himself just said, the Baphomet statue is based off of process theology. But let's go ahead and let's get back into Doug and what he has to say.
After they disbanded, nobody really wanted to own up to having ownership of the process. So the conspiracy theorists were free to say what they will. The Satanic Temple is an existing organization right now. I think if we disbanded, people would say, so many more horrific things about us for feeling that nobody would try to correct them, at least not in the courts. And that's kind of what happened to the process. It was fair game to say whatever you wanted about any of them, because I think it's kind of fair to say that a lot of them somewhat went into hiding over it, because there was such a panic at the time about the idea of satanic cults and things like that. So many of them just wanted to be left alone. They were blamed for the Manson murders by conspiracy theorists as well. And this came about because members of the process did visit Charles Manson in prison. And despite what the conspiracy theorists say, they try to make it sound like they visited Manson, that the essence of the conversation is unknown, or that they were otherwise giving him instruction, or that they had prior affiliation with him. There's no evidence of that. The process very much openly went there to interview him for a magazine they were doing. And if you can do that at the time, why wouldn't you, right?
Now, this is another blatant fucking lie. The process visited Charlie more than once. The first time that they visited, the DA's office, and we can all agree, we give Thomas flowers, highlighting what a scumbag Vincent Bugliosi was, right? But the DA was unaware of this meeting, because Charlie was talking about the process prior to that visit. So were some of the girls. That's when Charlie shut up. The later meetings for this magazine, and I have all the stuff from Ed's files, the letters between the attorneys, where they're sitting there trying to flesh all of this out. You see it in the court records that we spent a month going through this case, the libel suit in the UK, where they talk about how this interview, how this was able to be published when Charlie was locked up. How did they get it out of the jail, right? This is a blatant lie. They visited him more than once. But again, Doug thinks that you're stupid. The process wasn't just in San Francisco. And again, people really love to make this argument of, and it's a very disingenuous argument that I have no patience for, in regards to guilt by proximity. This shows that they haven't researched the topic very well. Because, again, even Dr. Smith of the Haight-Ashbury Free Medical Clinic said that he saw the family and their van parked outside of the process house on Cole Street. Don't you think that that's a weird thing for Tom O'Neill to omit from his Chaos book? Considering that the doctors were the focus of that entire book. It's almost like nobody wants to talk about the process. But Charlie did shut up. He would talk to Ed later on, discussing conversations that I have highlighted many times in regards to his, discussions with Marianne de Grimston at the Polanski house, and the insinuation that old Bobby DeG fucked everything up in regards to what he made sound like some type of porn movie with Audrey Hepburn. Thank you so much, Caesar. Thank you. I appreciate that. But you see this consistent theme of this edgelord perspective? They're just edgelords. That's it. They're just edgelords, right? That's all they are. They're not doing anything else. And the swastikas, yes. According to LASO and LAPD and INS, I've shown these things before. That's not a fucking swastika. It's a process logo. The things that the girls were sewing on their prison uniforms were process logos. This is what the cops said. Don't shoot the messenger. But here he is, decades later, continuing to propagandize these lies to the public because, again, they think that you're stupid. And again, they had to make an entire 4-part Netflix documentary series to attempt to besmirch and destroy the reputation of one man in order to try to get people to not look at this. Should tell you something.
I mean,
of course.
This was very much dominant in the news, and they felt that there was a perspective to get straight from the horse's mouth. So when you see these conspiracy theorists acting like this is something they try to conceal, it's not like that at all. The process themselves intentionally published this fact, and I have copies of their old magazines. I have the little article that they wrote up after visiting Charles Manson, things like that. So their intentions for being there aren't unknown. So that being, put forward as like this missing link to prove the connection between the process and Charles Manson is fairly ludicrous. And there's no evidence that they were ever involved in any of these crimes that anybody say that they're involved in. But still, nobody really wanted to talk about it. So at some point, I started tracking down former members of the Process Church to try to get an idea of their actual history, because very little had been written about who they really were. And miles of, reams of text had been written elaborating these bizarre conspiracy theories. And part of that was the Process's own fault. They didn't do much to archive their information. And in fact, when they disbanded, they were supposed to burn the books they had for their priests and things like that. We have a copy of one, though, at our headquarters in Salem.
Now, again, Doug thinks that you're stupid. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's take a look. We're not going to sit here and read all of it, however, because I have a lot of these documents, right? These, whether it's their legal documents or their internal teachings. So let me find one that we can kind of dig our teeth into. Let me see. Now, in the episode, The Process Dialogues, I go through some of their, it's their stool stuff that they channeled, whatever you want to call it, where they're talking about Freddy bodies, which is the Process's version of body thetans, for those who are familiar with what Scientology is, because Scientology is the root of all of this, right? Scientology is always at the root of this. Now, where did I put the damn paperwork? Right, you know what? We're going to pull up Ed's files because I know that I have it in there. Hold on. Because, he says, oh, like they were supposed to burn it, and, he has these copies. And I'm sure that he does have stuff that the public has not seen, which obviously I would love to see and get my hands on. He certainly won't let it go. But let's go ahead and pull this up right here. Where is it? Let's look at, we haven't looked at this in a really long time, guys. Where is it? Children and dogs. All right, let's go ahead and pull up their rules for their dogs. That way you guys can see this. So, because I have gone over this previously, and I have uploaded this as well into one of my waybacks, but the process rules are much more strict for animals than they are children. That should not surprise anybody. If you know, again, anything about the process, then you would know that makes sense. These people don't care about human life, and humanity is the devil, right? So here we go. All of this is supposed to be burned, right? So this is from December of 1969, the Pontiff's communication to all brethren of all chapters. Now, you see how he just makes it, he tries to make it sound like these people are bumbling buffoons? The animal officer, there's an animal officer. There's all different kinds of roles and ranks within these groups. And this is 15 pages specifying what you are supposed to feed them, very specific. In regards to the micromanaging part, I'll agree with Doug there. The micromanaging, that's fair. That's a fair assessment, okay? But this is one of the most important things. Now, how do we have access to that? Because of the lawsuit that Ed Sanders won on their home turf. Because he says, well, there's nothing that had been published at that time, but there had been reams and reams of, conspiracist literature. That's a fucking lie. Because Ed Sanders was vindicated in the High Court of the United Kingdom and made case law. Because everything that Ed alleged and more was true. And the process could also not prove that they lost a dime from the publication of that book. How many lies is Doug going to tell before people start holding him accountable? Because, again, eventually at some point in this series, I am going to show all of the public fights that we've had where I have tried to debate him in good faith with documentation. And it's amazing because when he's not on Tucker Carlson, where he can act like an edgelord and pretend that he's smarter than everybody in the room, Doug actually crumbles under very specific and educated scrutiny. And he can't handle it. And then he sends all of his little Thotianas from the temple to gang stalk you and harass you. This is the group that has tax-exempt status, religious status. This is my point.
So they had a clergy, they had a priesthood.
Oh yeah. They
Okay.
had a priesthood, and they had chapters throughout the United States and beyond. They originated from the United Kingdom in London, and they started as a schism group from the Church of Scientology.
Yes.
The Robert de Grimston and his wife Marianne Moore, they met as auditors within the Church of Scientology. And ironically, it was the hierarchical structure, oppressive hierarchical structure of the Church of Scientology that they wanted to leave to do something that they felt liberated their membership more to act according to their own will. And I say ironically because they became a cult that did micromanage other people's lives. So they started out as this kind of psychotherapy cult, as the sociologist William Bainbridge called them.
Didn't they call themselves a deviant psychotherapy cult?
They didn't call themselves that.
Okay.
William Bainbridge.
Okay.
William Bainbridge was a sociologist who became a member of the Process Church to write about them, and he ended up being a roommate to Robert de Grimston for a time after he split with Marianne Moore, and the process started to kind of fall apart. But he wrote a book called Satan's Power. It was something like a history of a deviant psychotherapy cult.
Oh, that's where that comes from. Okay.
Yeah, but in order to try to maintain that liberation, they did it in the psychotherapeutic context where they had they were still using e-meters in the way that Scientology does. And Scientology, they do these auditing sessions where they have what are essentially these lie detectors, where they have the metal cans that measure, the
electromagnetic pulses or waves or charge,
your
or
psychophysiological response, supposedly. Right. But how psychophysiological that is unclear when you actually play around with a e-meter,
because the dial just floats around, like the dial will just drift.
We have an e-meter in our headquarters, and I played with it, and I thought, there's no way that you can actually get a reading on somebody's state of mind from this, because I've noticed that if you squeeze it a little harder, the needle jumps. And it doesn't take much,
There are ex-Scientologists who still swear by it. I mean, there are Scientologists who have completely disavowed Scientology, L. Ron Hubbard. They say Scientology is a destructive cult, but they're like, but auditing is legit, and they still live for it. And
I know I still hold out some thought that maybe maybe I could find a way to use it better.
Me too.
Now, you already know why I'm stopping there. There you go. You just heard it yourself. Because let us not forget, the process had the P-scope. And that's why I included the screenshot in the schizo clip of one of the Satanic Temple members sitting there at the headquarters in Salem, holding on to the cans. Now, Doug likes to say that this is just a piece of, religious history. He has said this publicly on X in one of our many arguments. But he just said it right there. Doug is working to try and make the e-meter more effective. Just like the process, right? And let us not forget, they found an e-meter or a P-scope during the raid at Spawn Ranch. These things are the exact same thing. At its root, it is the exact same thing. It does the exact same thing. And it is not just a simple lie detector test. It puts out very small amounts of electroconvulsive therapy. And so you have to wonder why ex-Scientologists do not talk about this, nor do they talk about how pregnant Scientologists audit their babies in the womb to try and make their babies clear before they go full term and give birth. You have to wonder why these groups have tax-exempt religious status when they are, if we're taking the emotions out of it and sticking to the facts, providing electroconvulsive therapy to a baby in the womb, regardless of how light it is. A baby that is developing is the differences and the harm that can cause doesn't even pale in comparison to what it does to an adult. But when you factor in the adult factor, the human factor, in regards to things like what Scientology calls the purification rundown, where you're pumping yourself full of all these vitamins and you're sweating, and it causes all of these electrolyte imbalances. As an ICU nurse, I'm required to know that, certain electrolytes are going to make certain cardiac muscles, skeletal muscles, those imbalances can make the muscles much more excitable. It can kill you. So it is a big deal. They are not lie detectors. This is a propaganda line that is pushed by defectors and processians alike. Because if it's just a lie detector test, then why would someone who thinks he's so fucking smart, like Dougie Lucian, sit there and say that he is trying to make it more effective? This is just food for thought as we continue. So let's go.
But actually,
yeah,
but
same.
I got to say, I'm not there. I played around with it, and I can't get a fucking thing worth anything out of it. And it seems more like you're just, I lean towards the idea that it's just a superfluous tool to make it look like your psychotherapy session is going somewhere that it's not, and it's that it has more value, or that it has more empirical evidence to support, that the reaction is going one way or another than is actually true. It could be, I also feel like it could be similar to the pendulum trick, where you have yes on the top and a no on the bottom, and you hold the pendulum, and whether it swings up and down where on the yes axis or across on the no axis, you have your answer. And of course, that's just your own.
I have my pendulum here somewhere. It's fun to play with. It's the ideomotor effect, where your body will subconsciously move to give you an answer that you think is there or whatever. And the same is true of Ouija boards and so on. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Yeah, it's exactly that. And I feel like it's quite possible that that's what the e-meter is too. Like those almost imperceptible squeezes you do and things like that are just you betraying what you think the response should be at the e-meter. So, in that way, it could kind of work, but in a way, it's not really supposed to.
Exactly.
In a roundabout way. Yep. Anyways, enough about the e-meters. In any case, they started out doing that, but they did it a lot differently than the Church of Scientology would do it. They broke down those barriers of distinction between auditor and client, or whatever the Church of Scientology would call the person being audited, the auditor and audited. And they would just do these kinds of back and forth communications, and they would follow, the needle of the e-meter to figure out where they needed to go deeper into and explore in greater detail. And in that way, they kind of became more uprooted from reality, even maybe than the Church of Scientology, and went off into different directions and created this whole kind of collective narrative that they were building. And de Grimston was clearly a very brilliant man and did a lot of writing that I think has some merit. But when you investigate the process more deeply, you find out that he wasn't really that important to the inner circle of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, at least according to
it was his wife.
Right. Yeah, it was. She was definitely the.
Now, this is a point that I will continue to disagree with until I'm not wishing for ill upon anyone. This is a point, though, that I will continue to disagree with in regards to Marianne sort of being the wicked woman with apparently that golden gorilla grip moose knuckle, controlling everything, because Robert Grimston is still alive. So is his wife. Again, I encourage people, go listen to the podcast. I think it is episode 2, where I break down the truth about Robert and Marianne, all of the lies that have been told, because Robert actually comes from a very powerful family. Some refer to this as the nobility, okay? People tend to paint Robert as this sort of long-haired, messianic-looking fool that was a tool used by Marianne for her, wicked purposes, and I'm sorry, but I don't buy that. I think that these individuals all served a very important purpose, just like Timothy Wiley, just like all of these other individuals. I would like to show you guys, specifically though, in regards to, before we continue listening to this, because again, I have a lot of documentation. Some of this stuff I didn't get. Some of this is from the limited hangout website, The People versus David Berkowitz. Someone went to the university in California and got these, but this shows in regards to what he calls this, auditing, how they changed their auditing. And again, in the Process Dialogues episode, I go into their stool teachings and Freddy bodies, aka the process is Thetans. But this is documentation here, kind of highlighting how you would advance in the process. And again, this is all, there's a lot of language here. provisional masters. This is, 5 situations in regards to ordination, how you're going to be tested. Before you can be ordained as a superior or a prophet, masters, all of this stuff. Breaking all of this down. What is OP? We know that OP is an outer processian, the sacred teachings. I think it's fascinating, and this speaks to what I'm talking about, that part 1 of ordination is how to handle the media. It's not point 1, but it is in the first part. A member of the public, i.e. from the media, who is asking questions, both relevant and irrelevant, about the process and its teachings. Now, when is this from? This is January 11th of 1968 and revised March of 1973. This should tell you that this is their primary concern. And see, instead of auditor and what oddity, I don't know Scientologies. So we have questors and testors. Now, are they saying that they're using the P-scope? No, but we know that they are. And how do we know that they are? Because Timothy Wiley discusses this in great detail. And part of your ordination also includes channeling, right? So just as they allegedly came up with their Stuhl dialogues by, beating themselves in huts, finding Satan or Satan finding them, and doing paramilitary training, their channeling also brought us the Stuhl dialogues as they have come to be known. I just think that this information is important for people to consider because, again, this group is painted with a very favorable light. There is a huge financial propaganda spend for this group. And quite frankly, with Doug's whole endorsement of the Order of Nine Angles and 764, I'm tired of it. I'm just tired of it. I think it's unacceptable.
The cult mastermind. She was the one who would pair people up sexually. She was the one who was really dictating people's lives to them. And by the accounts I've heard from people who were in the process, Robert de Grimston was more of a bummer to them, kind of a nerd who just did a lot of writing, and whether they took his writings terribly seriously or not, who knows. But in any case, I was doing this level of investigation. I started talking to Timothy Wiley, who was, part of the process inner circle, worked with Robert de Grimston, Marianne, went to architecture school with Robert de Grimston, really had some insights as to how things ran on the inside. That said, he wasn't necessarily the best witness to his own life. He was also part of that whole kind of Timothy Leary psychedelics everyday crowd, and very much had a
right.
supernatural perspective upon the world, and did believe, I think, in reptilians and David Icke type stuff and things like that.
Oh boy.
Yeah, but he was a nice guy. Visited him in his house in New Mexico, and it was in investigating the Process Church of the Final Judgment that I met William Morrison, who is now head of TST TV, who I've known ever since then, has been a close friend of mine. So now we're both doing the Satanic Temple thing.
Yeah.
But
now, in regards to William Morrison, because I have done the exact same thing with William Morrison's interview, this is going to be a separate show. William Morrison, for those who are unaware, is from the band Skinny Puppy. The band Skinny Puppy, who did an album about the process. That album being produced by one Rick Rubin. Are you getting it now? I hope so. I hope that I'm driving the point home.
But you only asked one question. It's been this long.
No worries. I mean, for something like the Process Church, this level of detail is necessary. A, because people have just... Oh, my cat is pushing the mic. A, because people have just never heard of the process. And B, it's a super fucking weird cult. Like, it's a very, very weird phenomenon in the history of new religious movements. So yeah, no, I mean, I feel like all of this background is necessary.
Well, if you're part of an organization like this, it behooves you to know the history of any possible analogous organization, right? And know which directions you want to take and which directions you don't want to take. Because at a certain point, even if you're the top leader of an organization, in a certain sense, you're also a cog in the machine. And there's certain demands that are put upon you by your membership, followers, or whatever. And if you don't set appropriate expectations up front, or if you make promises you can't deliver on, or if you lock yourself into an unprovable belief system or whatever else, who knows how that plays out for you, right? And I don't think Robert de Grimston or Marianne went into what they did with the intention of becoming cult leaders. I think they went in with the opposite intention. So that's why I say when we first started, it was more me looking to organizations like the Process to figure out what not to do. And then when we were discussing the symbolism behind the Baphomet monument, that's when you can see a lot of borrowing of Process perspectives, because you do have all those binary elements on Baphomet. And I do think the strongest message related to Baphomet is the same message that was kind of the core philosophy of the Process Church of the Final.
Now, I'm cutting him off because, again, for anyone who wants to sit here and say that I'm crazy or that I'm making a stretch, he said it again. The core philosophy, the idea that the Baphomet statue is based upon, is process theology, the reconciliation of opposites. This higher intellectual study of Satanism. That's what your tax dollars are going to. Yeah, you don't want to try to debate him. I have. And I've, whatever, yeah, I'll take a break for 5 seconds and look at the chat. Rise to Liberty, like, literally, I have, and I've had his congregants, or former congregants, let me do this, his former congregants tell me that, like, I've embarrassed him. And this is why I've saved all of the, like, screenshots of our Twitter fights over, the year. Because it was really, like, 1 year that we really got into it. I'm pretty sure that he's muted me. However, he can't handle when you bring him their teachings, because I've asked him directly about their belief that violence is acceptable, that you should seek all pleasures, all perversions. This is in their writings. And when I asked him this, and also used court records like Ed Sanders' case, you know what he does? He calls me a conspiracy theorist. He calls me a religious Christian extremist. And again, this is the stupidest, most intellectually dishonest argument that someone can make. If people are willing to kill in the name of Allah, in the name of Muhammad, in the name of Jesus, in the name of Christianity, in the name of, racism or ethnicity, in the name of trying to purify a culture or, purify a people, if they're willing to kill for $5 or less, then they are definitely willing to kill or harm in the name of Satan. It's an intellectually dishonest argument, and people should stop accepting it from these people because it's fucking bullshit. But these people think that you're stupid. I think that Doug has proven that here, but honestly, if you're paying attention, it's Doug that actually sounds incredibly stupid.
Final judgment, the reconciliation of opposites, and I thought it fit really well with the idea that we were putting a religious monument on public grounds, not to usurp the place of another religion in anybody else's minds, but in order to engage publicly by upholding pluralism and showing that the two can coexist, even if they're in ostensibly diametrically opposed. But we could transcend that, and there can be a reconciliation of the opposites.
So I have a theory, and I want to run it by you, because one of the experiences that I had when I first joined TST was a surprise at the lack of pushback at how, for lack of a better term, Christian I was. I see I come from the Christian world. I did not convert from, I didn't deconvert from Christianity to atheism. I converted from Christianity like directly into Satanism. And I took a lot of Christianity with me. And one of the things that appealed to me about TST was that I felt like I could do that. I felt like I could retain a love for the symbol of Jesus, but while rejecting the supernaturalism, while rejecting the unfounded claims, while rejecting the toxicity, the homophobia, the sexism, the transphobia, just all of the bullshit, but that I didn't have to remove the Christianity from myself wholesale. And I think that the reason why I was able to do that is because maybe of the influence of the process church, that this is about the reconciliation of opposites, and that there is a much greater openness to like dual religious identities within TST. There's a much greater openness towards reconciling something like my past in Christianity with my current Satanism, and kind of celebrating both.
Now, again, what is another similarity that we see here? Christian Scientologist, John Mappin, right? We've seen this before. We've done this dance before. We've done it quite a bit recently. Now, if you're not familiar with this podcast, it's called Sacred Tension. I don't think it's on Spotify, but I know that it is on Apple. Sacred Tension is the sort of non-official podcast of the Satanic Temple. So I think it's really important to consider the weight of someone who has on the leaders of the Satanic Temple and says that it was the process theology that drew them in. Why would it be that? Unless it's the process. Because here we are again with blurring the lines of what belief systems are. And I don't tell people what to believe, but I am calling out the bullshit, because it is bullshit. This doesn't mean that I'm saying that I don't believe that you can believe these things. The great thing about my belief system is that I know and believe that we are all born with free will. So you can do whatever you'd like. I would prefer that you didn't sit here and lie and deceive the public, because before we end today, I am going to show some of the court documents from the 2023, which it's in appeal right now. I have a feeling that the Satanic Temple is going to lose from their 2023 lawsuit, where it came out in regards to some dirty things that were being done in the church, and how much money the church has spent just on PR to make themselves look good. That's what I don't like. If you want to sit here and be honest with the public, then that's fine. Do that. Don't say we're non-theistic, it's all about pluralism and blah, 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 because Doug likes to use these big words because he thinks that he's smarter than everybody. But put it in the perspective of this is fucking MindWar. What did we read in the beginning? There's no such thing as satanic crime. Let's switch out the word satanic with occult. There's no such thing as occult crime. Let's switch it out with ritual. There's no such thing as ritual crime. And of course, Doug wants everybody to forget that he just blatantly used to espouse his Nazi beliefs, but he apologized. So we're just all supposed to forget about that, right?
And so feeling perfectly at home in TST as someone who I think culturally is still very Christian, you know, and I feel like that influence, or I feel like that might be due to the influence of the process church. And I've never felt pressured within TST to be anything other than what I am, which is this weird syncretistic Satanist who has borrowed a lot from Christianity and still really loves a lot of my Christian background. What do you think of that theory? Because I don't feel like that would be true in Church of Satan.
Well, no, clearly it's not. They're as far as I can tell, their only purpose is to advance the idea that they have sole ownership over Satanism. And I honestly don't feel like I'm insulting them by saying that. I honestly feel that that's their sole.
Oh, they've said that to me. People, they have told me. I don't think that's a distortion at all. They have legit said those words.
Right. And so I think, I mean, if you have nothing else to do, if you have nothing else to claim for your activities, I guess that's going to be primary and important, but it's not to us. I feel like I feel like that's another benefit to us being very active in the real world, to the point that we don't have to really care that much about, you know, whether people are looking to us as the true. I mean, if they want to go to the Church of Satan, go ahead. You know, if they want to go elsewhere, fine. You know, really, like if you're not sure about TST, don't come. You know, like we don't have membership fees, we don't have tithing, we don't have, you know, we don't have this mission to proselytize to people. So to that end, you know, we might as well have a membership that fully embraces what we really are and truly understands it, and that'll be more of a credit to us than anything else. But what's kind of remarkable is how we've gotten pushback from the courts for that kind of openness, and how people have tried to use that openness to discredit us as a religion, which we saw during the Scottsdale case. The fact that we would accept allies to work with us who weren't self-identified Satanists was being used as an argument that, well, maybe none of them are Satanists, maybe there's no such thing as Satanism, that kind of thing. And I thought it was a really cheap kind of argument.
It's really elemental. Like that's like a toddler trick. Like that's just a very childish approach to religion.
Now, Doug, again, is being disingenuous here, but what else is new? So we are not going to read through the entire thing, but I would like to show, because I don't want to spend a lot of time on it in regards to this Arizona case, because, you know, Doug is really good at, how do I say this? At making people think that anything that comes up in court in regards to stuff with the temple, that it is, you know, these religious fanaticists and X, Y, and Z. Let us not forget the pipe bomber situation, which I have not forgotten. It's, you know, I'm still keeping an eye on that because I still don't think that Sean Patrick Palmer did it. Sorry, I haven't seen evidence to support any of that, and I think that dude has been railroaded. But that's a discussion for a different day. What I'm going to do, though, is we are just going to take a quick look, because I would like to show that actually the root of a lot of this is that these people can't keep their story straight in regards to the structure of the church itself. It's a big, you know, shell game. And whoever's, you know, typing in all caps, Mark Cunningham, you can chill with the typing in all caps. You don't need to be yelling in my chat, so pipe it down. Leave them in the chat, but pipe it down. I don't even know who you are. But don't be yelling at people in my chat. Okay? This is more important to me, though, because when you actually read these court filings, you see that what Doug says it is on these interviews or on TV, it's not this, you know, religious persecution as he, you know, plays it. Okay, well, then you're going to go ahead and you're going to go in timeout for 24 hours because I asked you nicely. So, bye-bye. 24 hours, you get a break. You can go pipe down or go yell in somebody else's chat. We're going to go ahead and take a quick look. This is page 5, so we're going to jump from the beginning and scroll down to page 5. Because just like every other group where you want to follow the money, they've made it sort of impossible. But again, I think that this is all by design. So this is the deposition, and you're about to see Doug's legal name. So this is a Satanic temple. He's referencing the Arizona case, right? Douglas Alexander Masico. This is his real name. Not Doug Messner, and certainly not Lucien Greaves, even though, would you believe it, they copyrighted the name Lucien Greaves. You want to talk about them acting like Scientologists? Yeah, they act like Scientologists. But right here, in regards to this relationship between the United Federation of Churches, LLC, and the Satanic Temple, and Malcolm Jerry, who we will be saving for another time, talking about, is Malcolm Jerry a fake name for Stephen Solling? How they have all these different names? I think that this attorney's doing a good job doing their job. At least they're getting it on record. You know, a fake name, a pseudonym. Yeah. Why do they need to use fake names? See, right here, in this case, they were in the middle of trademarking his pseudonym, Lucien Greaves. But in regards to the United Federation of Churches, LLC, doing business as the Satanic Temple Incorporated, LLC, you see all these separations? But see, the date of the incorporation goes all the way back to 2013. What was Doug doing in 2013? We're not going to get into it because, quite frankly, I've already talked about this stuff ad nauseum. He is the one that had his website with the process logo in the back, sitting there simping for the process and talking about, you know, false memory syndrome and all of this other nonsense, right? No, it's okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's good. Sorry. All right, now let me pull up because don't want people to say that I'm telling tales outside of school. Let me find his name here. Okay, this is on page 2, so this will be easy. Because when you look on Wikipedia, people gave me a lot of grief about, you know, just showing what Wikipedia says about Candace Owens. And I'm just like, well, you know, everybody references Wikipedia. I don't know. It's not a crime, but they're like, oh, you know, the Mossad or Israel edits Wikipedia. And it's like, well, really? I don't think that Israel is sitting there keeping tabs on the process's Wikipedia page that is regularly edited anytime something unfavorable is linked into Wikipedia. If you can prove that to me, then fine, I'll buy into your bullshit. Like, I'll wave the white flag on that. However, when you look on Doug's Wikipedia page, it says that he is this sort of like neuroscientist from Harvard who specializes in false memory syndrome, something that's not real, that was never a syndrome. And actually, it's been pretty well established by now, was a fucking CIA cutout. But here we go. So this is the False Memory Syndrome Foundation newsletter, spring of 2010, volume 19, number 2. So let's go down here. A new generation of myth-busting investigative reporters is also on the job. For example, Doug Messner has been attending meetings of people who claim to have been abused by satanic ritual abuse cults, and he then writes about the meetings and the claims on his blog. Doug has interviewed many retractors, listened to their stories, and followed up by investigating the therapists who helped them believe in what never happened. Most recently, he has brought to the fore some of the untenable claims of Colin Ross, MD. And what's his website? www.process.org. That's in 2010. So not only do you have the False Memory Syndrome Foundation promoting the process vis-a-vis Doug's, muckraking bullshit, but you also have Doug's stated relationship, stated, public relationship with the process via his research, actually dating back prior to 2010. Because his website was already established by that time. That's in the spring. So I think it's fair to say that it predates 2010. Oh, wait, we know that it does from Ed Sanders' archive because Doug tried to get in touch with the late Maury Terry and Ed, and both men wouldn't fuck with him. They left him on red. Since Doug wants to sit here and say lit and talk like the cool kids, I'll say that they left him on red, so to speak.
Don't make me go off on a tangent about what a dickhead that lawyer was in the Scottsdale.
Well, I think so. I just recently interviewed Matt Kazaya, who's legal counsel for the Satanic Temple.
Fully knows what a dickhead that guy
is.
Yeah.
Yes, I think he alluded some to that in the episode. But
that guy was an incredible dickhead. He was like a caricature of a dickhead, like the cartoonish dickhead type. It was.
That's hilarious.
Yeah.
So I definitely see the influence of like the reconciliation of opposites, pluralism, the you know, the fact that in the Process Church there was such emphasis on the reconciliation of opposites and the veneration of God, Satan, Jehovah, and Lucifer or Jesus. Which was it? Lucifer. There's Jehovah,
both Lucifer and Satan, Jesus and Jehovah.
And that really resonated with me because even though I didn't know about the Process Church and I didn't really know those intellectual underpinnings at the time, one of the things that really connected with me back in 2017 when I was exploring TST and it just clicked was, I can be the Baphomet. I can contain within my being night and day, light and dark, Christianity and Satanism. And I consider
at its best, at its best, that's what the process was teaching, but there seemed to be oscillation and confusion as to whether they considered themselves, even internally there was this confusion, it seemed, as to whether they were theistic and thought of these entities as literal beings out in the cosmos, or whether these were different components within each of ourselves, whether we each contained or if it was both of those things. You know, we contain a Jehovah, a Jesus, a Satan, and a Lucifer, and these are the different components of ourselves that we need to understand and have sympathy for and balance those things against each other.
Now, this is, again, another bullshit line, because when you read the Process teachings and when you read all of Timothy Wiley's books and you read books from random people that you would never imagine in a million years who were a part of the Process or the Foundation Faith of God or the Foundation Faith of the Millennium, later iterations, and Best Friends Animal Society today, they say that these four deities are personality indicators, that this is how you are identified as to what personality type, and this is what faction you join. In reality, they do venerate all of these individuals. And how do they do that? Well, not only do they perform these black masses, these Sabbath assemblies, they also perform sex magic, ritual orgies, and they also do a lot of the channeling of these specific deities. The Process talks about this openly. If you look hard enough and you look past the public PR game, they say that that is what they are doing. But they don't want anybody to look. And so when Doug sits there and says, well, we're a not theistic organization and it's all about pluralism and it's all about basically politics, well, it's fascinating because the Order of Nine Angles, some could say, because there have been publications out there from the Order of Nine Angles as well as 764 in the Temple of Blood, that they too, their primary purpose is political. One would think of James Mason, right? The Nazi, and the Universal Order, who, they venerate James Mason and Charles Manson, right? Because there's always this sort of Manson angle looming in the background, so to speak. So again, I'm telling you this to encourage people when you hear Doug spewing this bullshit. Please consider the source, because he's being incredibly disingenuous. And once we get into all the receipts, you're going to be able to see him admit it himself in writing.
Like amongst the Satanic Luciferian side, you would have your carnal self, that kind of thing. And then, on the Jehovah Jesus side, you'd have your more spiritual self, your more charitable self. That's that kind of thing.
But there was constant confusion, is what I'm hearing, between whether those were like internal archetypes and kind of a Jungian sense, or if they were actual literal deities out in the universe that had like personalities and stuff.
It appears to me that there was that confusion.
Okay.
Academics always depart on these things, and I've seen other academic writings that seem to take a hard stance on the process being clear about this one way or the other. And I think they're just taking a snapshot in time, and they're not realizing how iffy that was,
how convoluted the process was. Well, and
at least over time, I think if you probably went to certain events, certain sermons, looked at certain documents and stuff like that, you'd say they're very clear about what they are, but then you'd see something else that contradicts that later on.
So and just to be clear to listeners, I consider, my primary religious identity is Satanist right now, but there was like this very fuzzy period in when it was almost like I was a planet orbiting two suns, and it was like one sun was Christianity, and then was like non-theistic Christianity, and then the other sun was Satanism, and it was like, going back and forth between these two symbolic universes. And it was honestly a kind of really cool mental exercise and in cognitive flexibility. And then eventually I realized that no, my home really is in Satanism, but I don't hate my Christian background. I hate the abuses within Christianity. I hate the abuses that come from theocracy, that come from supernaturalism, that come from superstitious belief. I despise all of that. But in a lot of ways, I still love the figure of Jesus, the myth, depending on which figure, depending on which myth of Jesus. But also none of this is to this is what I was going to say. None of this is to discredit the importance of blasphemy as like a form of catharsis. Like I have no problem with, a black mass and desecrating the Eucharist and all that kind of amazing stuff, because that's like important to overcome religious trauma. So,
and again, I will reiterate what I said earlier when we read Doug's article. If you guys want to sit there and say that Satanic, again, let's be intellectually honest with one another, occult crime, occult ritual abuse is not real, then neither is religious trauma. Because I've seen people comment about like the butt wafers, right? We've already talked about that, so I'm not going to show it. But yes, the blaspheming of the Eucharist and, the cracker. This is going to be a really hot take, and I'm certainly not trying to hurt anybody's feelings, and I'm sorry. Well, I'm actually not sorry if I do. However, it sounds to me, from everything that I've heard in this conversation and what we know from Shiva Honey, the book of this blaspheming sort of ritual that again involves putting urine into a font, and someone's naked and there's wafers put in between someone's butt cheeks. Like, we've read all of this stuff. It sounds to me like you guys have a problem or a bone to pick with the Catholic Church or with the Vatican. Now, why is that interesting? Well, two reasons. One, Scientology is also very anti-Catholicism and has had a bone to pick with the Vatican for a really long time. That's part of the reason why I find John Mappin so just fascinating with, again, I think it speaks to the fact that he's Candace's handler, this Christian, quote unquote, Scientologist, and she's a Catholic, allegedly, that he's backing her so hard. I think it speaks to the fact that he's the handler, right? But in regards to this, blaspheming ritual, and again, it's going to be a hot take. If you unsubscribe or want to cuss me out in my comments, I don't really care. I personally view Catholicism in general and the Vatican as pagan. And if you study it historically speaking, that's what it is. It's paganism. I don't confess my sins to a man. I don't go and do a ritual where there is something that is supposed to represent the blood and the body. But I am certainly not confessing my sins to a man, because there is no man that can atone anything. And so again, if you study it historically speaking and take the emotions out of it, and does that mean that I don't think or that I believe that all Catholics are pagans? No. I think that there are people who are wise to the situation, but who go for the community, family, tradition. Because again, I don't think that the mass majority of congregants of any group are bad people, because then you're assuming that most of the people in the world are bad. I don't think that. I think that most people are good and that they are seeking community and for something to believe in. But to me, it sounds like specifically the Satanic Church has a bone to pick with the Vatican. And so again, I would say, if you're going to sit there and claim that satanic abuse, satanic ritual abuse, that satanic crime does not exist, then I'm going to say that religious trauma does not exist. Now, how insulting is that? There are people in my chat right now, I would imagine, because, there's over 200 people watching, which is really crazy. There are probably people in my chat right now who have had some type of traumatic experience within a religious institution, whether that be physical abuse, spiritual abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse. So that's pretty insulting of me to say that there's no such thing as religious trauma. But if we're all going to be intellectually honest with one another, then we need to play the game as they play it. And that's by holding the same standard. It's actually not playing a game. It's keeping the standard the exact same. If that is the case, then guess what? There's no such thing as religious trauma. Go take it up with the Vatican. Go take it up with the Pope. Okay? It's not everybody else's problem. If, and this is a big fucking if, satanic ritual abuse or satanic crime does not exist. But again, I did an entire show highlighting, in recent time, satanic murders that did occur and satanic crimes that did occur. So again, Doug thinks that you're stupid. And, if people believe him, I would say that generally, I'm sorry. At this point, there's no excuse. You should know better.
So just for anyone listening who might I don't know, feel judged about their blasphemous practices against Christianity, I think it's totally developmentally appropriate to do those things.
Oh yeah, no, me too. And like you say, it's lashing out against religious trauma. I think
exactly.
When people are doing it right. In any case, it's not necessarily this mean-spirited thing, but it's more like casting out your abuser from your mind. And you can do that while still recognizing that other people see it a completely different way. And now you're getting a bit too nuanced, I think, for a lot of the people who protest us and can't tolerate hearing this type of thing.
Well, I really like what my friend Miss Ida says. She's a satanic drag queen, and she's one of my best friends. And she says, blasphemy, not blasphemy you. It's blasphemy. It is. I'm doing blasphemy for my own catharsis. I'm not doing it for anyone else. I'm not doing it to piss anyone off. It is for my own cathartic emotional release. And I really like the way she put that.
Yeah, we're a long way from that being generally recognized, though. And even when you see some of the treatments of us that are inclined to our favor, sometimes they've tried to whitewash the blasphemous elements from public view. Like when Lisa Ling first did a documentary piece about us for CNN back in, I think, 2016 or something like that on the show This Is Life. It was notable that they edited out some of the blasphemous elements that I think they anticipated the general CNN audience would find too disturbing.
So you have a process tattoo, and you told me before we started recording that it frequently gets confused for a swastika. Talk about that.
I don't think it actually honestly ever gets confused for a swastika.
I think people are just being deliberately sorry, go on. Finish what you were going to say.
I think that's people deliberately trying to misrepresent and trying to cast aspersions. And I mean, if you don't know what a swastika looks like, I doubt you have any right to claim you're for or against it, to be honest.
Yeah, and it's
like if you're that unaware of history.
It would be a very derpy swastika if it was a swastika. It would be like a...
Well, in reality, straight from the person who created the symbol, Timothy Wiley, told me it was 4 P's.
Now, for those who have been with me for quite some time, you guys remember. This was at least 2 years ago, more than 2 years ago, when I was, figuring out that, like, oh, we got to redo this whole thing with the process, right? Especially with the genealogy part. You will remember that I had not looked into the Satanic Temple, despite many people telling me that I should, specifically Dougie Lucian, One-Eyed Doug himself. You will remember that it was a photo of that tattoo that is what started me on my journey. Let's go ahead and just look at this really quick. Now, isn't it interesting that it is 4 Ps? Kind of like the 4P cult. Because while I have discussed some of my 4P or 4Pi research on Walter Bosley's channel with Todd Wood, I am going to be discussing it on here as well, as we kind of move through all of this information. Because again, these people are playing word games and they think that you're dumb. I just Googled this and this is how I found it. So there is the tattoo itself. Now, do I think that this looks like a swastika? No. It's a process symbol, though. The amazing sin of omission with that I did not notice until probably 6 or 8 months ago is that Doug also has the goat of Mendes on his other arm. So he has 2 process symbols tattooed on his body. Not 1, but 2. Okay? So, why do you think that 4P calls themselves 4P or 4Pi? Why they call themselves that? Because of this very reason. They're mocking you. They're mocking you. And again, these people, we're going to look at how much money they spend on crisis PR teams. Because that's how desperate Doug is to keep his good image.
Overlapping one another, interlocking. So, that's the design. It's symmetrical with 4 angles like the swastika, but there the similarity ends, and it's clearly not a swastika. But even in the Arkansas case where we're putting where we're fighting to have the Baphomet monument erected on the public grounds because they put a 10 Commandments monument there, their argument against us has gone so far away from the legal argument that they're even trying to make the case about me in trying to make the case that I have a swastika tattoo and that the process tattoo is a swastika tattoo. And I went for depositions 2 days, 7 hours a fucking day And at one point, another dickhead lawyer, Mike Cantrell in Arkansas, little fuck that he is, was sitting there asking me about this tattoo, insisting it was a swastika. And I was telling him quite plainly, it is not. Can you not see this tattoo? Do you not understand what a swastika tattoo is? I told him that it's 4 P's overlapping. I told him that he can look in any book and compare it against a swastika. It's clearly not that, and that he was barking up the wrong tree. This asshole lied in a recent motion in the state of Arkansas, and he actually put into this motion that I admitted in deposition that it is swastika. And
Oh my
to
God.
me, I feel like, I don't know, maybe we should motion for sanctions or something like that, because now they're clearly lying to the court, and it's infuriating.
Also, you would be the worst neo-Nazi ever. It's like you believe in plurality, you believe in core liberal principles like free speech, and you believe in compassion and honoring all people's bodily autonomy. Like, you'd just be a really fucking bad neo-Nazi.
I'm also part Jewish. The ancestry.
Are you really?
I didn't know it until more recently.
Until
somebody in the family took the.
Oh, nice. Okay, cool.
Yeah, took the genetic test, and I
mean, there you go.
I'm so not a neo-Nazi that this kind of meant nothing to me. Like, I hear sometimes people.
Now, see, here's the really funny thing. Just like when we went through, and Sarah Anderson, I love you. I saw you pop in. I tried to get in touch with you. I don't know if you still have the same number, but holla at me, girl. But remember when we did the genealogy of Nicholas Schreck, aka Barry with no hair? It was the same thing. Because this host, in my opinion, is being incredibly disingenuous, because for anyone who has looked into Doug for 5 seconds knows that literally Doug was a fucking Nazi. Doug is a Nazi. I'll say it. Doug, you're a Nazi. Sue me. I don't care. The Satanic Temple fails in court, astoundingly so. So sue me. I don't care. But what do we see repeatedly? What I said in regards to Barry with no hair is a self-hating Jew. Sorry. It is what it is. I did the Shrek thing probably like 6 months ago. Longer than that. Where I go through all of his stuff. And I even read the porn book that his dad wrote. Which is really disgusting. And I don't want to think about it. So let's go ahead and let's finish up with this video.
People take these ancestral tests and they hear that they're, some ethnic mix that they had no idea, and it's a total upheaval to their sense of self.
Yeah.
I mean, they could have told me literally anything. They could have told me I was 80% African, and I would have said, "Oh, okay." I mean, it doesn't change who I am, right?
Yeah, no, I get that. Like, there are people whose identity is very rooted in the fact that, back in the day, their ancestors were Scottish rapists and pillagers, and it's like that really fucking matters to them. And then they take a DNA test, and their entire self-conception is ruined. But okay, so speaking of neo-Nazis, you went on Tucker Carlson.
Okay, so that is all we have for that, because I cut off the interview there because whatever, I'm not saying that Tucker Carlson is or isn't. However, it's them just basically sitting there acting like a bunch of edgelords, right? And in regards to the Shrek stuff, you're just going to have to go back and look in my lives because it's there. Barry is in the thumbnail of both of them. I think I did those shows back to back, reading from Daddy's porn book, which again, just bleh. But what I would like to show you guys is I don't want to sit here and go too deep into it. I think we are going to save it for the next episode, primarily just for time's sake and because I am really hot. But I want to show you guys 2 filings that the temple in regards to this Newsweek lawsuit, because it was an appeal as of April of this year, and I have not seen anything updated in the court recorder. If I am wrong, I'm happy to be corrected on that. But there was a Newsweek article that came out, and it was talking about abuses within the Satanic Temple. Because again, Doug wants you to think that if you are a member of the Satanic Temple, that this aligns with his conspiracy of being a victim of a vast right-wing conspiracy theory or conspiracy, right? This is what Doug wants the public to think. And in reality, these individuals brought forth, and there is some evidence to support it in regards to private communications between some of the higher ranks of the church, that there were abuses, including sexual abuse. Because when me and Doug started having all that public fallout on X, or Twitter, as it was called at that time, I believe, there were multiple former congregants that had reached out to me. I've heard a lot of terrible stories, including rape going on in the temples, and that this rape is considered a ritual. And that these women, if they dare to speak out or report anything to authorities, that the church enacts what some would call fair game, where they destroy by any means possible. And so obviously a lot of these people do not come forward, right? So these are just things to consider, but we're just going to look at the money that was spent in regards to this case. So this right here, page 1 of 2, exhibit 28, invoice number 7204. Levick Strategic Communications LP invoice summary, $25,000. It's a lot of money, right? Let's go to the next one, right here. Declaration of Malcolm Jerry. So the Satanic Temple Incorporated versus Newsweek Digital LLC. So right here, he is Malcolm Jerry, co-founder and co-director of the Satanic Temple. In his role, his responsibilities include financial accounting and tracking donation trends. General reputational damages. People have canceled their recurring donations to the temple because of the article. We received feedback from people that they believe the subject article statement to be true because Newsweek published it. We have also been unfavorably compared to the Catholic Church because of the article statement. To combat the ill effects of the article, I hired a PR firm and a PR professional to assess and mitigate damage done to the temple from the subject article statement. The sum of our remediation expenses was $43,350. True and correct copies of invoices I received and paid in connection with this effort are attached to the motion in order of appearance. So, that is what the temple was spending donations on to protect its good name. The great irony here is that the firm that the temple hired was used to help the Catholic Church with a pedophile cover-up. It's ironic for about half a second, because we're going to do a refresher at some point on Mr. Massimo Intravigne, the Catholic extremist that is good friends with Doug. That way I can show that not only do I think that publicly presenting they actually have a bone to pick with the Vatican, but in reality, the people that are actually powerful within the ranks of the Catholic Church, someone like Massimo Intravigne, who is very likely a member of Vatican intelligence at the very least, who also works night and day to protect pedophiles of all religious backgrounds, most notably, most recently, within the LDS Church. It would make sense that these individuals are all friends behind closed doors, that they all align in their beliefs behind closed doors. Because again, this speaks to the end game of it's all one thing, right? It's all one group. It's all this blurring of the lines. And they can call it pluralism and non-theistic and blah, 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 blah. And, you know, religious trauma, and we're not doing anything wrong, but I would highly disagree. Again, They think that the public is stupid. I think that this has been a heavily financed media campaign to keep the public stupid. And again, I think that this stems from, and this is the only thing that me and Doug would agree on, is that this extends from the original, in my opinion, media mockingbird operation, where there were real cases of satanic abuse going on in the 80s and in the 90s. But the media's job was to overhype and over sensationalize to an extent and make it seem, specifically using the word satanic, because again, I think that satanic is overused. There's a lot of paganism. There's a lot of different ideas going on here, because when we start looking into the Order of Nine Angles and 764 and, looking deeper into the roots of some of the, rituals of the process and even Scientology in itself, we've got, Druidic beliefs, we've got theosophy, we've got all of these different sort of paganist belief systems, and it all comes together. And I think that a better term is, neo-Gnostic paganism. But that's too complicated, and so I understand that Satanism, unfortunately, is just an easier way. It is an easier word, right? But I think that it's a continuation to the now. It shows the money that they're willing to put behind it to cover all of this stuff up. Because in the show a long time ago, where I read the email exchange between the late great Dave McGowan, may he rest in peace, and Lieutenant Colonel Obsissimus Dr. Michael Aquino, what did he say to Aquino when Aquino sat there and I don't at me about pronouncing his name wrong, I don't fucking care. What did he say to him about, Aquino saying that all of this stuff was a conspiracy theory and it was all baseless? Dave said the same thing to Aquino, that he was claiming to be the victim of a vast right-wing conspiracy. This is the same thing that Doug is claiming now, except for Doug is somehow tying it into like this sort of Russiagate angle. And again, he wants you to believe that there is no organization of boots on the ground with these groups. And I am going to share the video, like I said, of the Joshua Sutter files that I find to be the most informative. It is long. I do think it is important for people to watch, though, because, I haven't touched the Order of Nine Angles or 764, primarily just because a lot of other people talk about it. It's on the news. They talk about it on Alex Jones. It seems kind of like a shit coat, you know what I mean? And also, they tend to ignore the Fed angle, which is very sus to me. I think that speaks to the limited hangout nature of the public discourse on the Order of Nine Angles and 764. I think that, again, two things can be true at the same time. I think that these cults can operate and people can believe in these things, and they can also be working for the government, and they can also be sanctioned and funded by the government. And I think that in reality, and I'll probably reserve my commentary on the case for quite some time until I can really get my thoughts together, I do think that is a large part of what has happened in Delphi. Because again, you can't take away what is done to someone in the commission of a crime, right? Can't take that away. That's still there. It can serve two purposes, though, right? Because these people, they would say, you can serve two masters. They do. I think I'm going to leave it here for now, though, guys, because, again, this is going to be broken up into a multiple-part series. We might listen to William Morrison next. I think it's important, especially while I have Candy Hook on the brain, to go ahead and bring that up, because he does talk about Rick Rubin. That way I can show the clip of Candace talking about how she believes that Rick Rubin was sent in to be her handler, that she was too smart for it, though, which is absolutely hilarious, considering that I would say Rick Rubin is just blatantly process, and then what did they send in to be her handler next? Corporate process, aka Scientology. She didn't see that one coming, right? But I think that will be a fruitful way to kind of get into the Temple of Psychic Youth, Psychic TV, Genesis Peorage, and kind of work our way into those direct connections from Psychic TV and the Temple of Psychic Youth. And if you know about Steve Albini, buckle up, because I found the original article and we're going to look at it. And it's fucking rough. It's worse than anything we've looked at today. But we are going to get into that and those connections to Richard Molt, David Myatt, these individuals that are revered and considered almost sacred, like Charles Manson, and certain factions of the Order of Nine Angles and 764. It's all one big circle. Or, as George Carlin would say, it's one big club. And I'm not in it. Hopefully you aren't either. Have a great day.